All right, so in section 2.3, we talk about formulas and problem solving. And in introduction, I just want us to think about answering this question: when do I ever use algebra in the real world? And this is a problem that we might run into. It's pretty basic, but I want you to um, solve this before you move on in the video. Solve this without the use of algebra. So the problem is you want to construct a rectangular pig pen with a width of 6 feet. What should the length be if you only have 28 feet of fencing to use for the pen? And I want you to solve this without using algebra, but really pay close attention to exactly how and what calculations you did and when, and why you made those calculations. So pause your video, take some time before you move on. Okay, now that you've looked at this problem, and again, pay attention to the exact calculations you did. So maybe the first thing you did, since you know it's a rectangular pen, the first thing you might have done is just draw a diagram. And you figure, okay, a rectangle looks like this, and it says the width of 6 feet. So maybe we call this side the width. But you know, in a rectangle, the other side is also the same. So you might label things like this, but the first calculation that you do is you probably figure out, well, I need to use 6 times 2, or 12 feet of fencing for the width, or the two widths, I guess, right? So then now we have to take and figure out, well, how much fence is left for the lengths. So we take the total of 28 feet and we subtract that 12, and we get what, 16? 16 feet is left to make the lengths. So one of the lengths would be 16 divided by 2, right? So if I take 16 and divide it by 2, I'm going to get 8 feet for one length, right? So if the lengths are both 8 feet, then the dimensions would be 8 by 6. But if you add up all your edges, you get 28 feet and so on. But think about the calculations that we made. You know, it's quick things that you can keep track of in your head. It's things that you can think through and calculate at the same time. Like, how much fence am I using for the widths? Well, 6 times 2 is 12. I can keep track of this 12. Then I use it to figure out how much is left for the lengths. And so I take 28 minus 12, and I could probably do that in my head. I don't know. And then I realize that one of the lengths then would be 16 divided by 2, right? So how does this then work, and how do I let algebra solve this? So how can we solve the same problem using algebra? And you might even attempted to do that. But in algebra, the nice thing about algebra is that we only need a relationship involving all the quantities in the problem. Now, these quantities can be known or unknown. So when we think about this um, pig pen problem, it's a rectangular pig pen. Well, the fencing represents the perimeter of a rectangle, and that's the relationship. So if we think this problem is dealing with the perimeter of a rectangle, and you already knew this relationship or you were using it, but there's a formula that gives a relationship between the perimeter. The perimeter equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And again, it's a formula that you were using up here, understanding that in a rectangle, the the sides opposite each other are supposed to be the same length. So 6 feet and 6 feet, and then 8 feet and 8 feet. And if you take and add up all the sides, there's 2 lengths and 2 widths, you get the perimeter. So this formula is a known, like I say, a known formula, and a formula just relates more than one quantity together. But think about this. Once I have this relationship, then just insert known values. So the perimeter was the 28. That was how much fencing I'm going to use total. And that equals 2 times the length. Well, the length I don't know, so I'm going to leave that as L, plus 2 times the width. Well, the width I knew was 6. And now use algebra. Use our algebra to solve for the length L. So the first thing that the algebra tells us to do is to simplify expressions. Well, the first thing I would have to do here is just simplify 2 times 6. So I'm going to start out 28 equals 2L plus 12. And you notice that was the first calculation that we did before. That's the first calculation that we did, was take 2 times 6 and get 12. Well, when we simplify this expression on the right side, we get that 12. The next thing algebra tells us to do is isolate the variable term. So isolate the variable term. And by doing that, I need to zero out the 12 on the right side, which is the same as attaching a negative 12. Or if we think of it, take 28 on the left and subtract 12, and we get 16 equals 2L. And the actual calculation that we did, the second calculation that you did, was taking 28 and subtracting 12. The last thing algebra wants us to do to solve is isolate the variable factor. And I know we do that by canceling or attaching fractional factors of 1 to cancel. So here I need to attach a 2 in the denominator, which is the same as dividing by 2. And the third calculation that we did was divide each side by 2, and we get 8 equals L. And remember, L represented the length. Therefore, the length is 8 feet. So I want to look at this little statement. It's in your notebook too, but it's kind of what we just got done realizing. The algebraic steps to solving the equation generate the exact same problem-solving steps or calculations, right, needed to solve the problem. So when we think through problems either without algebra or with algebra, more than likely we are doing the exact same calculations in the same order. And the thing that people don't understand is how do I use algebra in the real world? Well, when you're keeping track of your steps, you actually are using algebra. When you're keeping track of what the values mean, like the 12 feet was the fencing for the two widths, and the 16 feet is how much is that is left over. We could do the same thing here. Um, the 12 feet, the two widths, the 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 6 represented the two widths. When we subtracted the 12, we get the 16. Notice what the algebra is telling us. 16 equals 2L. 16 is how much fence I need for the two lengths. And then when I divide by 2, I get 8 equals L. So one of the lengths, or one of the, 8 equals one of the lengths, which is L. If we just let algebra and read it as a language, it's basically telling us exactly what we need to do to solve.